Hello, everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. This week, the governor signed an executive order to establish an emergency drought commission in Oklahoma to support those affected by persistent drought in all 77 counties. We also have updated information about the USDA's drought assistance programs. For some guidance, here's SUNUP's Curtis Hare and Dr. Amy Hagerman.
Well, moisture did come to some parts of the state, but drought is persisting for a lot of producers. So, Amy, let's kind of generally talk about some relief programs that are out there for those producers who are dealing with drought.
So USDA has several programs that are available for different kinds of losses associated with drought. For example, for our livestock producers that have had to reduce the number of days of grazing or had to supplement with hay, the livestock forage program is available. The LFP differs based on the type of grass you have on your operation, but then also differs by the county that you're in because it's tied to numbers of weeks in drought and how deep that drought was. So if you're in western counties in the state that have had multiple weeks of deep drought, there's a different payment rate for those programs than in other parts of the state that have had multiple weeks of drought, but maybe not as intense as some of those other counties. So the producers just need to talk to their county FSA office to find out about what that payment rate is for their operation. The other thing is that a lot of our insurance programs are going to be really critical documentation right in this period of time. Document losses quickly, communicate early for those of you that have insurance on operations. And that's documentation is going to include not only what you see of the loss, but reporting and having those adjusters come out and document the losses as well to determine what the payment will be. Again, that documentation is really critical for other reasons as well as we get into tax season. And USDA has a right, even under self-reporting, to ask for documentation at any time. So that's really, really important. Another area that producers can be thinking about is the consequences this is going to have going into the future. As you said, we've had some rain in certain parts of the state, but this has certainly affected hay cuttings in the state. It's also affecting kind of grazing going through even into the further months, and it's affecting soil moisture for crops. So already planning ahead for that next crop season for the consequences in 2023 is really important as well.
And you're also getting some questions related to another program that is, well, related to drought as well. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've gotten a lot of questions about the expansion of the emergency assistance for livestock, honeybees, and farm-raised fish. It's also called ELAP. The acronym does not match the name. But producers are asking about the transportation cost aspect of this program. ELAP was expanded in recognition of some of the drought disasters that were happening across the country to allow producers to get some offset for the additional transportation cost for bringing in hay this year. Because drought is so expansive across the country, people are having to go further to get hay, and it's really costly to do that as you get out to 800 or 900 miles away versus 50 or 60 miles away for your hay sourcing. What producers will need to report, again, good documentation, is what kind of hauling distance they had last year, how many bales of hay they had to purchase last year, and how that compares to this year. The county level has a set transportation rate that they're going to use for producers that are eligible for this. So you'll need to document your transportation rate last year. They have the transportation rate they're going to use for this year, and they'll use that to estimate what that cost offset is if someone's eligible for the transportation reimbursement program.
And in just a couple of days, you're actually going to have a webinar about drought assistance, right?
Absolutely. We're going to address some of these very questions. We're going to have a Mesonet update of drought outlook. We're going to have some update on hay usage and grazing and strategies to reduce hay needs and supplementation on the operation for livestock producers. We're also going to have a market outlook for livestock markets as we're thinking about selling cattle, but then also buying cattle in the not too distant future. And then we're going to talk about these drought programs and the tax implications.
Alrighty, thanks, Amy. Dr. Amy Hagerman, Ag Policy Specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And if you'd like a link to the information about that upcoming webinar, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Welcome to the weekly Mesonet weather report. I'm Wes Lee. We have shown you week after week just how warm and dry we have been this summer. For most of agriculture, this has been devastating. However, there has been one bright spot: plant disease pressure. In general, it takes a certain humidity and temperature level for diseases to develop. This year, it has been mostly too hot and dry for ideal disease conditions. Mesonet has 3 disease tools on the website: one for pecan scab, grape black rot, and peanut leaf spot. Looking at these 3 tools gives us an overview of the disease pressure. On this graph for pecan scab at Ardmore, you can see the green line for this year is much lower than the last 2 years or the gray 15-year average. For peanut leaf spot, shown here for Fort Cobb, the green line again is much lower than the other 3 lines that show the last 2 years and the long-term average. Lastly, shown here is the last 5 years of grape black rot for the Perkins station. The disease pressure for 2022, shown in blue, is lower than each of the previous 4 years. Expect warm weather to continue for at least a few more days before maybe breaking at the end of the week. Now here's Gary with the latest drought map.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, unfortunately, we find ourselves in another bad situation with the drought. We're back once again increasing the drought across the state with no improvements as we go through another dry period here in the state of Oklahoma. Let's get right to that newest drought monitor map and see where we're at. Unfortunately, we have increases in that exceptional drought. That's that dark red color that's already existed for the last few weeks in southwestern and parts of the panhandle. But now we have it starting to encroach into southeastern and east central Oklahoma. You see those little splotches there centered over Centrahoma and up into the northern parts of that area. So again, we have the worst of the drought situation increasing in the state. I see no areas where drought has decreased. We didn't recommend any of those decreases. Even though we did get just a little bit of rain up in northwestern Oklahoma, drought is on the swing upward again across the state. We can sort of see that in the consecutive days with less than a quarter inch of rainfall in a single day map from the Mesonet. Now those areas up in the north central and northwestern parts of the state going on 45 days or more now without a quarter inch of rain, at least in a single day. But you see other areas of the state were up to 5, 10, 15, 20 days without a quarter inch of rain. So this is another dry spell, hopefully not a long one, but we are starting to see that increase day by day. Areas without significant rainfall. With each passing day, some of those rains fall off the 30-day rainfall map. We can see that on the percent of normal rainfall map for the last 30 days from the Mesonet. Those oranges, those reds, they are starting to increase across the state. Now they cover most of the north central and northwestern part of the state, and now they extend down into much of east central over into central Oklahoma as well. And with each passing day, as I said, more of those colors of the blues, the greens, even the yellows are going to start to get into those reds and oranges, meaning increasing drought conditions. As we look at for the next 3 months, unfortunately, the outlook from the Climate Prediction Center is not good. It shows drought developing or persisting across the entire state at least through December. So this covers the October through December timeframe. In their estimation, drought is probably going to increase. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Continuing on the topic of drought, here's Dr. Dave Lalman with ways to save on feed costs while still maintaining your production goals.
Feed costs are high this year, but there's still opportunity to grow calves, weaned calves at home, if you have the intention of retaining those calves for 45, 60 days or something like that. But with commodity prices the way they are, even though they're expensive, there is still an opportunity to put a ration together and grow calves at a modest cost. For example, now this wouldn't work for everyone necessarily, because you just about have to be able to handle a semi-load of, whether it be, in this case we're going to talk about a ration that's rolled corn, so a load of corn, distiller's grains, and then some just kind of moderate quality hay. But a ration of about 34% hay, 33% dried distillers grains, and 33% rolled corn, which is what this ration is here, actually winds up being a ration that's fairly well balanced for calves weighing around 5 to 550, and with the anticipation of, you know, if you're not sure if you want those calves to go to wheat pasture or if they're going to go on to market after about 60 days, somewhere in that 1.5 to 2 pounds a day gain target might be optimal. That way they're still gaining weight at a cost-effective cost of feed gain, and so that might still work for some folks. But that third, and a third diet limit fed to about 12 to 13 pounds to those 5.25 to 5.5 pound growing calves would get you real close to around 2 pounds of weight gain per head per day. So we calculate the cost based on delivery cost here close to Stillwater, Oklahoma, of those two commodities. And then I think we priced the hay in that ration at $125 a ton. The cost of gain was 88 cents a pound. So that might work for some folks. Obviously not everyone's got the storage capacity and the feeding equipment and so on that you'd need to have to make a program like that work. The other option that would be available to some people would be to put the hay in a dry lot pen, have adequate hay feeder space for the set of calves, open the gate and let the calves in there to consume hay for about an hour, push the calves out, shut the gate, and then feed the concentrate portion of that ration somewhere out in the pasture in lined up feed bunks or something like that. So if you don't have the opportunity to blend hay in the ration, that'd be one way to get that done and still drastically limit the utilization rate of the hay and get those calves to gain efficiently. Hopefully that would work for some folks that want to add some value to their calves after weaning.
With us now is Derrell Peel. Derrell, how are the livestock markets looking right now?
You know, markets are holding up very well this fall. Feeder cattle markets are quite strong. We're running about 15 to 16% above a year ago across the board, from lightweight feeder cattle all the way through the heavyweight feeder cattle. And of course, fed cattle markets have been holding pretty steady too. This is normally, for fed cattle markets, about the seasonal low of the year, and obviously we've got some stronger underlying trends that are helping support these markets. The feeder cattle markets, the calves may come under a little bit of seasonal pressure here in the next month, but it's actually looking like we may not see too much of that seasonal pressure this fall.
Well, obviously, you know, we've been in a drought, and so typically this time of year we're talking about wheat pastures in September. Is there anything to talk about right now?
Well, it's quite spotty. Obviously, we do have a lot of dry conditions. You know, USDA's crop progress, the latest one, shows that we are planting some wheat in Oklahoma. In fact, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. It's just getting started. And I don't know how much of that is producers dusting it in, if you will, hoping for a rain. There's a few spots that do have some moisture. So obviously there's some interest in that. And you know, we're not sure this year whether we're going to use wheat pasture for stocker cattle like we normally do. We're short on feed in a lot of cases, so we may be interested in using wheat pasture for cows and calves as much as anything this year. So it's a little uncertain right now in terms of what we'll see for wheat pasture, but there's certainly some interest in it.
So if we have winter grazing, what do the budgets look like for that?
You know, if there is a possibility of doing some winter stockers this year, the budgets actually look pretty attractive right now. The way the feeder cattle markets prices are from lightweight to heavyweight, the value of gain right now looks pretty good. If you look at the futures market for feeder cattle out into the spring and into next year, there's an uptrend in there. There's actually a significant premium built in there. So you could lock in an even better value of gain, if you will, at this point in time. So if we can do it, the budgets look pretty attractive right now.
So what can we expect to see with the markets in the next few weeks?
Well, you know, again, we've got kind of competing forces, if you will. You know, normally we see a fall run of calves. That puts pressure on the market, especially for the lightweight feeder cattle. And we'll have some fall run, but we know that the runs this summer have been bigger than usual in terms of volume of feeder cattle through auctions. So there may be a little bit less of that fall run than normal. At the same time, we also count on having things like wheat pasture in the fall to generate demand for feeder cattle. We may or may not have that this year. So it's a little bit uncertain, but underneath it all, again, there's this general trend of stronger prices because cattle numbers are working their way tighter and tighter. And so there's probably going to be generally pretty good support for feeder cattle prices over the next few weeks.
Well, thank you, Derrell, and we'll be sure to keep an eye on those markets.
Dr. Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, is here now. Kim, the latest WASDE report came out this week. Did you see any surprises?
I don't think there was any surprise in it. You look at ending stocks to summarize everything. Wheat at 610 million bushels, same as it was last month. So no changes in the wheat at all. You look at corn, it came in at 1.22 billion bushels. Last month it was 1.39 billion. The 5-year average is 1.5, so tight corn stocks, but again with expectations. Soybeans, 200 million bushels. That's down from 240 million last year. The average is about 500 million bushels, so tight soybean stocks. Cotton, 2.7 million bales. It was 3.8 million last year, so cotton is also tightening up. Now you look at the world situation, 9.9 billion bushels for wheat. That's the lowest since 2015. Corn at 46.2 billion bushels, down from 48 billion last year. Soybeans, 3.6 billion bushels, a 3.7 billion average, and cotton at 84.8 million bales, and that's down the lowest since 2019.
As you were taking a look at this, kind of what aspects stood out for you?
Well, if you look at the numbers, I think they're near expectations, and we've got tight stocks nearly on every commodity. Also, you look at Australia, they're fixing to harvest the second largest crop ever, and Canada is fixing to harvest the third largest crop ever, but that's already factored in the market. I think what we don't see is the uncertainty in the market caused mostly by Russia and Ukraine and the war. The uncertainty of supply, the uncertainty of demand. You know, with supply, you just don't know how much is going to be produced in Ukraine and Russia and how much can get on the market. Demand, you don't know if the importing countries are going to continue to maintain higher stocks. And then, of course, there's disruptions in the transportation system that we could see.
Obviously, input costs are part of this conversation, as always. What are you seeing there?
Well, nitrogen prices were coming down a little bit, but you look again, go to that Russia-Ukraine war. Russia is cutting off the natural gas to Europe. It's impacting their nitrogen fertilizer productions, and I think those prices are coming up. I think we're going to see our fertilizer prices stay relatively high. Fuel prices are down, and that's a good thing, but they're still 25% higher than last year.
Where are prices now?
Well, if you look at wheat, they've been moving sideways. We did get a little rally, about 50 cents this last week. They got up to $9.05, leveling out, backing off there a little bit. You can go to corn. You know, corn had been on a tear. We'd had about $2.10 price increase in corn. Looks like it peaked out. It got up to, about $7.65, something like that. Backed off a little bit later in the week. And then sorghum, $6.90. Significantly less than corn. Soybeans, we had an 80-cent increase in soybean prices early this week. However, at the end of the week, it looked like it was trying to back off a little bit. Got up around $14.40, came back down to around 14. Cotton has just been sideways on that ICE December contract at $1.02, so not much happening there.
What kind of guidance then do you have for producers amid all this uncertainty?
You just don't know what can happen to prices. So don't try to capture it all at once. Just stagger it into the market, dollar cost averaging.
Okay, Kim, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
Good morning, Oklahoma. Welcome to Cow-Calf Corner. This week's topic is about getting a feed analysis report on your hay. And we all know what we're going through this summer in Oklahoma. The flash drought that started in June really abruptly shut off our forage growth. And a lot of us are struggling to secure that hay supply as we think about the onset of winter just a few months down the road. At this point, we know that we are not only in a drought ourselves, but most of our surrounding states are way down on hay inventories because of persistent drought. And so it can come as a relief to find somebody that says they've got hay to sell you, and yet it is a really good idea to ask for that analysis of the content of that hay before you actually purchase it. But what can you learn from a feed analysis report? Well, you're going to be able to get back information on the dry matter content of your hay, the crude protein content of the hay, the energy level that's in the hay. The simplest form and way to look at that is a total digestible nutrients, or TDN content. We can also see information come back on net energy for maintenance, net energy for gain, and net energy for lactation if we want to look at more precise estimates of energy content. And we can get just a relative feed value of that hay as well. We're standing in a hay barn here this morning, and it's a good example. We could go look at a couple bales of hay, crack them open, and actually find hay that has been put in this barn over the past few years. It may appear very similar to the naked eye. Something like Bermuda grass hay, we may look at two big bales. They appear to be very similar. We may find that they vary a great deal as far as crude protein content and energy content. If we've got that information, say on two potential sources of Bermuda grass hay, it's priced the same, we may find one is 15 to 20% crude protein, maybe total digestible nutrient values of 60, and another one that appears the same, maybe at 5 to 7% crude protein content and be down around 50 to 55% TDN. It helps us to make a more informed purchase if we've got that feed analysis report. I think you're going to find most of your better hay vendors are going to provide that information so you can take that into account in making hay purchases. The other thing in a year like this, where we're going to see some failed, say, corn or milo crops that got turned into hay, it's a good idea to get that nitrate test. Various nitrate levels leading to nitrate toxicity can cause us a variety of issues when we start feeding those to beef cattle. Particularly pregnant cows, we may get to a level of nitrates that are high enough to actually cause abortions. We may get all the way up to levels that can cause death in some extreme cases. But it's a very good idea to get that nitrate test back and take a look at the nitrate content of those hays before you actually make that purchase. And our nitrate toxicity fact sheet actually is a little more informative of what we can do if we've got some of that hay on hand or potentially purchase it. So just some ideas to keep in mind by getting a feed analysis report of our hay, whether it's already on hand or we're purchasing. It helps us to plan so that we end up with maximum livestock productivity out of our feeding program so we can feed accordingly. Thanks for joining us this week on Cow-Calf Corner.
Finally today, late summer and early fall is always a special time in Oklahoma because it's fair season. This week, Seth Fish takes us to Cleveland County for the sights and sounds of the fair.
We are here at the Cleveland County Fairgrounds. It's the first sort of big day of the Cleveland County Fair. We have, of course, behind me the carnival, which is open today and tomorrow. We have our livestock shows, our youth livestock shows, which happen Saturday and Sunday, as well as a lot of fun events like wiener dog racing, arm wrestling, tractor pulls. We also have our exhibit hall, which is where members from the community create crafts and they grow fruits and vegetables and bake pies and cookies and things like that for some friendly competition to be judged. And so that's always a great thing to check out and see what the community has come up with this year.
Right now we're in the exhibit hall. This is the OHCE area, the exhibits. So all around us we have where the different OHCE groups have set up their individual exhibits. And we have 8 different groups, OHCE groups in Cleveland County. An OHCE is the Oklahoma Home and Community Education Groups. They're all volunteers. Over in the back of the room we have their country store. So at the fair they set up a table where they sell different products that they've made and donated. And then the money from that goes towards scholarships for high school seniors. Then we have an Indian taco kitchen that's in the corner, and it's the same thing. They come and they volunteer their time and they sell the food. And the money goes towards scholarships.
We are in the Ag Barn at the Cleveland County Fairgrounds. We're actually right in the middle of the Dairy Goat Show. If I can get out of the office for a little bit, I love coming to the show. I really hope to see the dairy cattle show. That is my background is in dairy, so I always love seeing the dairy cattle. You know, and this is just in general, it's a great opportunity for the public to see agriculture. You know, they're not really going to get a opportunity to really get a peek at what we do, you know, and what these kids are working so hard on. It's of cultural importance, tradition, also for the industries that these kids will actually end up going back into. You know, so there's all kinds of different skills that these types of activities and these types of hobbies and these types of interests actually improve our children and the next generation. So it's a wonderful experience.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can see us anytime on our website and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.